What an incredible experience to be here. Graduating in 2004, I feel like I'm coming back to report in my progress, how I'm doing. It's my evaluation of sorts, I think, And getting ready for our talk, Jenny and I had lunch, and she was sharing me about the initiatives that she's talking about around sustainability. And the idea of people and prosperity and partnerships just really rang true for me. And it's what I've been learning since, actually kind of over a lifetime, but in particular putting a finer point on these areas of study through the Drucker studies and continuing to be a student of Drucker. And on the back of my credenza at work is Daily Drucker, and so I visit that, and the corners are kind of tattered, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that. I also just, not for my prepared remarks, just wanted to say wow to our first speakers. Howard, you really inspire me. We're going to talk in a minute about journaling, and the very first page of the journal is my purpose. And my purpose is to be awake every single day, to see things the way they really are, to build environments where myself and others can thrive, to be willing to take risk without knowing how things will turn out, thereby living a life full of adventure. So kind of very parallel to what Howard was talking about. Thank you. Not attained it, but working towards it, and just having a blast doing it. If there's anything I want to convey, and is the energy I feel in my body when I get to go to work every day. It is a real honor and a privilege to lead Partners Federal Credit Union. We serve the Walt Disney Company. We call them cast members and their families, and that includes everything that's under the umbrella of the Walt Disney Company. So ABC, Pixar, Lucas Entertainment, Marvel, just some wonderful brands that we get to learn about and serve. Before I get started, though, I'd like to have kind of a show of hands, if you would. Is anybody here on a team and trying to drive strategic outcomes through some kind of mission? Raise your hand. Okay. Keep your hand up if you're the leader responsible for the people who are trying to get that mission done, right? So many hands here. So I think we're all in this journey together about leadership and having an impact. And when I think about it, actually, mine spans about 50 years, and it starts on the first team that I was on. This is Don's Plumbing, Little League Baseball. That's me holding the bat there. That's my brother Jim next to me. Next to Jim is Calvin. Calvin did 2 tours in Iraq and didn't come back from the second one. And that guy who looks like Anderson Cooper, that's Howie Bain. Howie's an accountant now. And we all kind of stay in touch from good old 2727 Bradford Avenue in Arcadia, California. Kind of wild when you think about it, The other thing is that this is my current team. And you wouldn't know it by looking at this team, but there's myself and one other person in the 13 years that I've been at the credit union. And at first you would think, that's not a good sign. And actually, we think it's part of our secret sauce, that people go on to fill their dreams, what's important to them. We've had 2 folks from our executive team go on to be chief operating officers. 7 go on to be CEOs at other credit unions. And it's kind of created a great kind of a brotherhood, teamwork community, because we're all really passionate about the credit union business, which is people helping people. So along this journey, I've just learned a lot. And Jenny and I were talking about one of the ways that I try to capture the learning every day. And part of that is journaling. And you can see in the picture that's up there, there's a stack of journals kind of sitting on the left-hand corner. And a mentor of mine told me one time, you know what, you really need to soak up the day. There is so much wisdom and knowledge and insights. How can you go through the day without a pad of paper or something, or better yet, a journal? And so he bought me my first journal. And he learned and helped me figure out how to kind of use this sponge just to kind of suck up all the good insights so that you could do better for yourself and others as you go forward. So my journaling practice actually, it kind of really evolved. First, I would write a date, probably a couple meetings that I attended, maybe some of the disappointments that I felt, and then it began to evolve to this very kind of creative platform and place to think about how can I connect ideas with other people, how can I get more people involved, What are some of these evolving principles that I can kind of refine and explain to others? And it became just kind of this wonderful experience and playground for ideas. And then the real challenge was, in the end of my purpose statement, is being willing to take action with knowing how things were not going to turn out, thereby living a life of adventure. So I had to challenge myself to be courageous, to say some of these ideas need to leap off the page, and we need to take a risk, and we need to make things happen for ourselves and for others. And so that challenge of trying to do all that learning is what the book is about that Jenny mentioned, and a really humbling experience to try to put down on paper very succinctly kind of these ideas that I think that works. But in the pages there is actually what I think is an operating system for an individual or an organization. If you want to go from point A to point B, from current state to future state, right, to your North Star, 5 questions that you can kind of ask and answer to help kind of guide your way there. And also in the book is a story about an organization, about a leader who gets lost and can't find his way. And by using these questions and in a supportive environment, the culture is able to kind of get back on track. And it's really what I'm trying to learn and what I'm trying to perfect and what I'm learning about trying to be a leader along with the rest of our team. So 2004, I graduate. Yes, right? Phone rings right away. It's like, this is unbelievable, right? You get graduate school and headhunters call you for a new job. I think that this is connected. It's hardwired from maybe the Drucker School to my desk. I don't know how that worked, but sure enough, it did. And it was a credit union that was called Vista. It was one of the Disney credit unions. They were looking for a new leader. And when I got there, wow, was so much opportunity for such a fantastic brand. But we weren't real sophisticated. We were a mom and pop shop. And I mean that in the nicest sense of the word, right? We just had not yet had the opportunity and the investment to start learning some of the more sophisticated ways of running a retail bank that's owned by its members, and that's what a credit union is. So I knew it wasn't what I knew, what I learned here at the Drucker School. It's what we know that matters. So how could I help us find our way to a strategy? Because basically we had a budget and a tactical plan. And I went to Peter Drucker's book. And we actually went through the 5 very important questions. Who is your customer? What do they value? What is our business? And we spent a lot of time asking and answering and trying to find our answers to those questions. It created a focus for us that really kind of put us on a different arc, a different level of growth. So we started out with about 150 employees. Today we're 500, still a small company, but growing and thriving. Our net income when I got there was about $1 million. Today it's about $25 million a year. The other thing is from 30,000 members to about 140,000 members now that we're serving. And our vision for ourselves is making all financial dreams come true. Kind of very Disney-esque, but it's a real challenge and an enduring one for us. So you can see a couple different reporting agencies that in our industry talking about our arc and trying to do more. And the way we think about this when we look at this arc that you see behind me is we're making dreams come true one at a time, right? Moving from $30,000 to $140,000. There's nothing better than this. We get to do this, and we get to do it for our fellow cast members. Cast members serving cast members. So pretty interesting. So we talk about that we want to accomplish as much as we can for our fellow cast members. And we talk about it being our full potential trajectory. And we know that this is this right alchemy and combination of capital and people and process and technology. And if we get it all right, if we get it all just perfect, we can climb this potential curve. If we reach for too much, we can actually put the organization into distress. And we've done that. I've done that. And had to be humbled and kind of pull back saying we're reaching for too much or too little, and you can actually be bored. It's not a thriving place that's buzzing, that you feel really good about what the mission is. So if that is true for the organization, the insight that I'm having as a leader and what I am learning is that this is true of a person too. An individual needs to thrive. And so there's all kinds of ways of talking about this. And I love that Jeremy said he's not particularly a fan of the idea of it being a triangle. Jeremy, in my mind, I see it actually as kind of an infinity sign, oscillating and pulsating. I don't know, that's kind of how I would see it, but I'm not going to mess with Mr. Maslow's work. But the way I would reframe it is I would say, I think that what this means, what he was telling us, is a man must be what a man can be. And to do that, there's this integration of head and heart. That perfect alchemy is when we're feeling great, when we're feeling connected to others in the world, and we're able to use our creativity and our imagination and put all those things together. Wow, this is pretty powerful stuff. So my thought was, if you could do this for one person, understand that triangle and make that happen, actually, Partners Federal Credit Union is 500 little triangles walking around, right? At any one time, I'm concerned as a leader, where's your energy at inside of that context? And I think my job now as a leader, it's less and less about knowing about technology and new credit card payment systems, and if there's any business that's under assault, it's financial services. But my job really is to build up energy one person at a time and then focus it on your mission. And what I'm learning is that if it matters to you something, it probably should matter to me, is something that we talk about. And it's odd the way this works. It wasn't intuitive to me at first. That there isn't the separation between work and home, and there isn't the separation between what you're doing today and where you want to go professionally, which may take you outside of Partners Credit Union organization. To me, now it's all one thing, right? For you to be what you must be, if it matters to you, it matters to me. And it's taken us down a course of thinking about human development, capability development, a little bit differently on our journey. Before, an employee might have 3 days of training a year, 4 days of training, something like that. It would look like regulatory training, process training, new product and services training. It makes sense. Now our employees are going through about 140 hours of training a year per employee. We've really tried to step it up. And what we're talking about is that journey from inside out that we're all on, that our members are on, that our other stakeholders are on, and trying to understand that. First, by understanding yourself and what your needs are and how you perceive the world and how you want to make your way through the world, and then how others do it too. Same intention as you, but maybe just a little bit differently. And so that's some of what we're trying to recognize. This slide here is really talking about the other recognition as we're putting together these concepts to become at our full potential. Is the idea of the organization, also a hierarchy many times as we've been taught. And at the top is me and at the bottom is we, and traditionally that was a little we, right? Probably not as much focus as Jenny has been talking to us and helping us understand. And then really we've gone through an evolution of trying to flatten that hierarchy, right? To take out the layers. And it wasn't really an efficiency play, because we know that doesn't work through the research so much. It was more about trying to get the leadership team more connected to where things were really happening, where it's happening out on the branch floor, where we're meeting our customers. To thinking about the triangle, we talk about flipping it upside down. That's the leading edge of inquiry. That's the leading edge of investment. That's what management, what all of us need to get closer to, because that's closer to really executing and doing well. To this last idea of saying the executive team, for me, I am a smaller piece of that equation because we have such an excellent leadership team that we're more concerned about speaking with one voice when we face the organization. So yes, we have our individual vertical responsibilities, kind of the egocentric kind of approach, which we need to have. But also when we integrate and put it all back together, it's the concept of bringing this all back together for the collective we. We talk with one horizontal voice. And at first I thought this was a progression moving from, from left to right. And actually it's not. They need to coexist. I need to have a strong sense of self. A department needs to have a strong sense of its mission, finance, accounting, strategy. But when we bring it all back together and integrate that, it's both egocentric and ecocentric. It's both horizontal and vertical. We talk about it as saying, what should we rather do as an organization? Would you rather inhale or exhale? Right? It's both. It's both. It's integration of both. Right? I wish it was as simple as one thing. But this is systems theory thinking, how this all needs to kind of come together. The individual, the small we to the big we, to kind of make things happen. Had to do that. So here's what I've learned by using my education here at the Drucker School with experience of just being on the mission at Partners Credit Union, all the way back to Don's Plumbing. I think somewhere in there is that inside-out process that we're all going through, that me, is really important, that human capital, that human potential. And if we each have focus on each individual and their potential and their future and what matters to them, we roll that up to the big we, and that's a huge competitive advantage. To do that, though, it takes the people who are in the C-suite. We have to have a different mindset about human capital and about potential. This is not something that we walk down to the HR department and say, hey, we need to get us one of those strategies, those people strategies, going to make that happen. No, no, no. We are the architects. We need to see it through to make sure that it gets done. And if we do, I think we can even move beyond sustainability, the bottom couple layers of what Maslow talked about, to something much more compelling, something much more humane, something that has a great competitive advantage, and that's our full potential. And we may never get there, but having our eye on that prize energizes the organization, energizes stakeholders, and is really what I'm learning it's all about. It's about relationships and results done simultaneously. And to do that, we need to reframe what we think leadership is. Thank you.
What a great talk. Thank you so much, John. And I want to open it up. I've got two questions for John. He was humming and hawing about whether to show the next slide. John, would you please tell us what you're doing next?
So I had so much fun writing the book and putting it down and believing so much in this. And I said a minute ago, it's not what I know that matters, it's what we know. So I started something called the CEO Corner, and sure, my book is there. It is the smallest piece of the idea. The idea is that where inspiration and enlightenment intersects, why couldn't we have a place like that for leaders to go? Leaders make a difference on the trajectory of their organizations towards full potential. Why not have a place where people are really smart, can show up and make contributions? And so there's white papers written there. There's folks that are either doing what I do in the public and private sector management. There's academics who are going to be making contributions here. And then also executive coaches and such. So yeah, and starting in January, we're going to have podcasts that go out, interviews with leaders talking about what they're doing, what they think is important, what makes things work. So pretty excited about it.
And it's a great platform. By now, you're probably wondering whether we've practiced the morning. Have we orchestrated? We haven't, right? and what's interesting to me as I sit through and listen to the speakers, what a common red thread runs through everything as we talk about self to society, and very much the human side of management permeates everything we do at the Drucker School. My question for you before we open up to the floor, John, when we had lunch, we had a wonderful lunch, and we've had a number of really great conversations about this day, you made a comment that just stuck with me, and it's, what does it mean to be a stakeholder versus a free agent? Remember that comment you were talking about? And sort of an advice comment, especially for younger people, and we've got a lot of students currently in the program in the audience, but I think it's a good piece of advice for all of us.
Yeah, if I remember, we were talking about it in the context of a lot of folks saying Gen Y is kind of a free agent, right? And I said, that's not my experience. When I connect with them, I can remember when I was 25. And when we talk about those common things, where they want to go and what they want to do, they'll be stakeholders, they'll stay. So those kind of labels, I think, we just need to drop them. And I don't accept that about Gen Y. I think they want to build things, do great things. They have the same triangle on their heart that I have, you know. So I think that's important.
And we had a long discussion about that because we work one of our age groups, our cohorts, is people coming up 30, and I think we as leaders have a real responsibility to take care of this new generation of future leaders coming through. When we look at the data, we see quite gross high levels of underemployment. For example, I was reading recently, it's around 50% underemployment if you're aged between 22 and 27, and so we had a really good conversation about this over lunch and on the phone, and probably other times we talk because I keep bringing it up. But I think the key message is what can we do as leaders to look after this next generation of people coming through so that they find a place in this world just as we were given opportunities, and what does that look like? And John, his comment is that young people too want to be stakeholders and have an equal part to play in organisations. I think that was a really good point. Questions from the floor, please. We have microphones to make sure we can record, but who has questions for John, please? Oh, good, thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Some of the data which I'm kind of interested in indicates that the concept of teams. The more different your teams are, the better the work you do, the more productive the work, the better your ideas are. Whether it's people with different experiences, different backgrounds, and what have you. How have you incorporated that into the work that you do?
There's a lot of people here who could talk about that, but at Partners, it's just realizing that the velocity of change in the way that we do banking is profound right now. And there's no one person who can keep up with it. Before, you might have been a business owner and you might have been able to do a little bit of research on the side on your own and kind of bring forward some good ideas. But the velocity of change now is so great. So we actually have our organization built into, this is kind of a common model, to think about exploit and explore. I don't like those words. I like people who are in charge of running the business day to day, incrementally making improvements and making it great. But on the other hand, there's a group that needs to be able to explore new ideas, whole new way of making payments, right, for example, in our business. And so that's what we're doing, is just acknowledging the way the world really works, is that you can't do both at one time, and they can't be separate. They need to be integrated. Integration is a word that just keeps coming back to me as something that's important. So the way we achieve that between exploit and explore is that we have folks from the business units work in the innovation portion, then take that new innovation back to the teams and put it into implementation. I like the accountability on that, but I also kind of like you being a stakeholder and bringing that back and part of the change management. And then later on, you go do a tour of duty and innovation and then back to business. But that way we're kind of getting that specialization. And we'll put our hand up right away to say that we don't know something and bring in third parties. Jenny helped us with relationship pricing at our credit union. We didn't have the bandwidth and we didn't have the know-how. We put our hands up. It's no big deal today not to know something. It's no big deal. So that's kind of how we handle it.
There's a question down the front.
Yes.
It's an interesting mission of helping people's financial dreams come true. I wonder if you could talk about what that means. Making people's financial dreams come true. Yeah. And I have one question after that.
Sure. So the value proposition is that better rates, lower fees, excellent service, personal service, Disney flair. All right. So that's what we're doing. But we know that in your lifetime, you're going to get your life into a financial ditch. We're going to be there for you. We're going to get you back on track. So it's more than just providing commodities and services. We're your partner, Partners Credit Union, to help you with that. And we really mean that. And education is huge for us. We think, too, that we're really disturbed about the trends, what's happening with household wealth, retirement, those things. And that's part of our mission, too. We've just achieved something called a low-income designation. It means a good portion of our members are people who live at 80% below in their given neighborhood of what the average income is. We're having to create new kind of programs to address those challenges, going after grant money to kind of put together stuff that wouldn't be sustainable if we didn't, kind of get real creative about how we're going to provide services. One of our big challenges right now in Orlando is we have a population of about 10,000 folks who are coming from Haiti, English as a first language, unbanked, and trying to find out how we really need to meet them where they need help. So when we talk about having all financial dreams come true, it's very different in your life cycle, and it's very different from where your starting point is. So it's a big mission. And you have a follow-up question.
The follow-up, I may reveal my ignorance here, so forgive me. My understanding is that Bitcoin, and I think the category of currencies is called blockchain, that this is potentially a revolutionary force in financial services. Are you folks thinking about that? What does it mean in terms of making people's financial dreams come true?
Yeah. So I see it as a revolution as big as the internet, and it is coming. And in it is so many wonderful tools that are in there about how we're going to deal with identity is one that's in there. We know that it's probably 2-3 years out for our business, our scale, our size, that we think the use cases are going to apply. We are entering into a partnership with Disney, who has a blockchain group, the credit union, a think tank for our industry called Filene, and I sit on that board. In addition to that, the University of Irvine has got kind of a blockchain group. So we're trying to get ahead of it to think about what our use cases are, what we're going to be doing. But I am really excited about it. It's going to have profound effects on business for sure. Yeah. Thanks for that question. Yeah.
You talk about taking risks, and I know in banking that's your business is assessing risk. But from a personal perspective, what have been some of the risks that you've taken that have led to the greatest adventures, even if it wasn't the outcome you originally envisioned?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think the one that I wish I was more courageous at and started sooner is this one on understanding myself and understanding therefore others, and to make a bigger investment there. I mentioned going from 40 hours to 140 hours. I wasn't sure and courageous enough about how to implement that. At first it was myself, and then some of my leaders, and then it was all leaders, and it was all leaders every year, all year, and now all 500 people are going to go through that training starting next year. I wish I got there faster. I wish I was more courageous. It was the right thing to do, but I kind of went into it kind of step by step. So I wish I went faster, farther, faster, more courageous.
Hello. You speak about your team's engagements and having, every function within your organization doing something different. So I'm interested in knowing how you brought the structure about with, having the umbrella of your mission and then having each individual group develop their own mission and purpose, and how you were able to integrate all that so it came together as your plan for what you wanted to do.
So starting with Drucker's 5 question about what our strategy is and our mission, having working session with every team, starting kind of with, like you said, the high umbrella, and then having each team work about what is your part of that, what is your vertical slice of that, and then show me that you can be ambidextrous and bring it back into integrated across the horizontal piece. But every department, as you would imagine, has their own scorecard and their own performance, but it needs to be able to dovetail back up to the higher mission. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I was kind of curious to know how you're going to communicate that. Because I know education is more when you're doing that kind of change management. And it's like, how did you keep people engaged within that purpose? And I've done that before with other corporations. It's just always something that's very interesting to me. Because sometimes when that concept is new, it's not always absorbed as quickly as other concepts.
One of the strategies we use, we have a cross-functional team together when we're setting the strategy. We actually put together a magazine every year about drawing all those lines and comparisons, how all the stakeholders are winning, what their opportunities are, what their contribution to the total is. We have quarterly town hall meetings where we talk about mission update, how are we doing? We talk about what's going well and what's not going well. Within 24 hours, we have an answer out about what we've done or not done, or if you had an idea, yes, we'll do it, no, we won't, and here's why, or number 3, I need a little more time to research it for you, and we'll get back to you as a collective team. So that's kind of the cadence of how we're trying to go. More and more, the meetings, the town hall meetings are run by the team. They determine what the agenda is, what's important to talk about. Management is there, and we give a high-level overview, 15 minutes, and the rest of the time is back to the team. What's important to you is important to me, right? So that's how we try to work it.
Good morning, John. How are you doing?
Good.
Cool. Current Drucker student had a question for our current students and prospective students. What would be your advice for us to take away with our time here at Drucker? And what was the most valuable aspect of your time here at the Drucker School?
Great question. I didn't catch on fast enough what a great opportunity this was. I think my first 6 months, I might have been checking the box a little bit as a working adult, trying to get it done and move on. And it wasn't until I slowed down saying, wait a minute, these are some amazing people are here. And I can negotiate a little bit what my deliverables are. I remember being in Jay Pragg's class in finance and saying, you know what, Jay, someday I'm really going to have to answer the question, do we buy the mainframe or do we lease the mainframe? Right? I'm going to face that decision. I don't know how to do that. I'm leaving your finance class. Can you help me? I would say do more of that, right? Build your toolbox of things that you're going to really need before you leave, because they got the answers here. Yeah.
We have another question, and we've been asked to make sure we have the microphone to the question. So just down the front, I see a hand. Yeah. Put your hand, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, my question is, how optimistic are you that your approach will permeate the financial industry as a whole? And what do you think needs to happen for a ripple effect, for this to become more common?
So I mentioned not being courageous enough to push it out further faster, but here's what's happening. It has a snowball effect that is starting to take place that surprises even me. So I mentioned we have a lot of leaders who have left our organization. They're taking kind of that philosophy and school of thought to other organizations. I didn't think this would happen, but that group who's working on blockchain, 5 former team members are coming together saying collaborative work, like-minded, that speed of trust that can happen. We're on this much earlier than a lot of other people. Dividends have paid. I mean, we're one of the first credit unions in the country to be on Apple Pay, Google Pay, right through these kind of partnerships with like-minded people. So, you know, it has very real, it helps us punch above our weight class is what I call it, right? Yeah. So I think it's a real commodity. It just works. It just works, this kind of philosophy. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure.